On the 9th of April, 1912, the RMS Titanic departed from Southampton, England, on what was meant to be her maiden voyage to New York City. She was the largest moving structure ever built by human hands, a marvel of steel, luxury, and modern engineering. To the public, the Titanic represented the future. To many, she represented something even greater, proof that mankind had finally mastered the forces of nature. More than 2,200 people boarded her decks. Among them were some of the wealthiest individuals in the world, families seeking new lives across the Atlantic, and crew members who believed they were serving aboard the safest ship ever constructed. The Titanic carried 16 watertight compartments, remotely operated doors, and a hull designed to survive severe damage. Confidence surrounded her like a shield. Few aboard believed anything could truly go wrong. As the ship made stops in Cherbourg, France, and Queenstown, Ireland, she took on more passengers, more cargo, and more expectations. By the time Titanic entered the open Atlantic, she was moving steadily westward, her engines driving her through the cold night sea with quiet authority. Inside, first-class passengers dined beneath chandeliers. Music echoed through grand rooms. In lower decks, families slept in shared cabins, unaware they were moving toward one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. On April 14th, Titanic entered a known ice field. Throughout the day, wireless operators received multiple warnings from nearby ships reporting heavy ice and large icebergs directly along Titanic's projected route. Some messages were delivered to the bridge. Others were delayed or dismissed. Ice was not considered unusual for the region. Confidence in the ship's strength remained unshaken. That night, the sea was unnaturally calm. There were no waves breaking against the hull, no white foam around icebergs to make them visible from a distance. The moonless sky offered little light. Visibility depended entirely on the sharp eyes of the lookouts stationed high above the deck. At 11:40 p.m., the warning came too late. An iceberg loomed directly ahead. The order was given to turn the ship and reverse the engines, but the Titanic was moving too fast, and her size worked against her. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side of the hull, tearing open a series of punctures below the waterline. The impact was so gentle that many passengers barely noticed it. Some felt a vibration beneath their feet. Others heard nothing at all. Below the waterline, the damage was catastrophic. Seawater poured into the forward compartments at an alarming rate. Within minutes, it became clear to the ship's designers and senior officers that the Titanic was fatally wounded. The ship could survive flooding in 4 compartments. 6 were breached. Water spilled from one compartment to the next as the bow slowly began to sink. Despite this knowledge, panic did not immediately spread. Crew members reassured passengers that there was no danger. Lifeboats were uncovered quietly, almost casually. Many passengers were reluctant to leave the warmth and brightness of the ship for small boats lowered into the Black Ocean. The first lifeboats were launched partially empty. This hesitation would cost hundreds of lives. As the minutes passed, the bow of the ship dipped lower into the sea. The angle was subtle at first, but unmistakable. Water crept onto the forward decks. Passengers began to notice the cold air rushing upward from below. Stewards knocked on cabin doors with growing urgency, instructing people to put on life jackets and proceed to the boat deck. Below decks, the situation was far worse. In the boiler rooms, engineers and firemen continued working as water rose around them. They were ordered to keep the ship's power running to maintain lighting and communication. Many of these men knew they would not survive. They stayed anyway. Their actions allowed hundreds of others to escape into the lifeboats. Most of them were never seen again. Third-class passengers faced confusion and delay. The ship's layout was complex, and access to upper decks was limited. Some gates were locked, others unmanned. Language barriers added to the chaos. While not all third-class passengers were deliberately held back, many struggled to find their way upward in time. By the time lifeboats were filling properly, the ship's list had become severe. The reality of the situation finally broke through the illusion of safety. Fear spread across the decks. Voices rose. Some passengers prayed. Others begged to be allowed on a boat that could no longer take more weight. At 2:05 a.m., the last lifeboat was lowered into the sea. More than 1,500 people remained aboard the Titanic. The Atlantic that night was brutally cold, hovering around -2 degrees Celsius. Anyone who entered the water would experience immediate cold shock. Breathing became uncontrollable. Muscles stiffened. Survival time was measured in minutes, often less. As the ship's bow submerged completely, water rushed across the decks. People were forced upward toward the stern. Some slipped and were carried away by the rising sea. Others jumped, choosing the freezing water over the certainty of being dragged under with the ship. From the lifeboats, survivors would later describe the sound that followed. Thousands of voices crying out in the darkness. Screams echoed across the flat water, carrying far into the night. The sound did not fade quickly. It lingered, then slowly diminished as the cold claimed one life after another. Survivors listened, unable to help, surrounded by floating debris and bodies. At approximately 2:18 a.m., the ship's lights flickered. Then they went out completely. In total darkness, the Titanic's structure failed. The immense stress caused the ship to break apart between the third and fourth funnels. The bow section tore free and plunged toward the ocean floor. The stern momentarily rose into the air, exposing the propellers against the night sky. For a brief moment, the stern remained afloat. Then it too sank beneath the surface. At 2:20 a.m. on April 15, 1912, the RMS Titanic disappeared into the Atlantic Ocean. The sea closed over her as if she had never existed. When rescue ships finally arrived, they found lifeboats scattered across miles of ocean. Of the more than 2,200 people aboard, only about 700 survived. Over 1,500 men, women, and children died that night, most from hypothermia in the freezing water. Many bodies were never recovered. Decades later, the wreck was discovered resting more than 12,000 feet below the surface. Modern exploration has revealed haunting details: shoes lying where bodies once were, personal belongings frozen in time, entire sections of the ship collapsing under deep-sea pressure, and bacteria slowly consuming the steel. The Titanic is not preserved. It is decaying. Each year, more of it disappears into the darkness. What remains is not just a shipwreck, but a warning, a reminder of human overconfidence, of ignored warnings, of the thin line between order and catastrophe. The Titanic did not sink suddenly. It sank slowly, giving people time to hope, to deny, to realize the truth, and finally to face it. The true horror of the Titanic is not found in the iceberg. It is found in the waiting for lifeboats that never came, the waiting in freezing water, the waiting in darkness as the ship tilted higher and higher. Most of those who died that night did not die instantly. They knew what was happening, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. This was not just a maritime disaster. It was a human tragedy played out minute by minute, breath by breath, in the coldest part of the Atlantic Ocean. And even now, more than a century later, the Titanic continues to haunt us, not because of how she was built, but because of how she failed. If you want more true stories where history turns dark, where real events become real horror, then you are in the right place. This is Dew of Dread, where the past is not forgotten, and the truth is allowed to breathe in the darkness. If this story moved you, disturbed you, or made you think, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to Dew of Dread, and share it with someone who believes history is only found in textbooks. Because some of the most terrifying stories ever told actually happened.